Hi, my name's Roger. I'm one of the senior techs at Maxim Truck and Trailer. Hi, welcome to Ask Roger. This is the next installment in our helping videos for you guys out there. Today we're going to talk about your air systems. As many of you are aware, with air brake systems, this is what we call the treadle valve or foot brake valve. And I'm going to focus primarily on this part of it here. This is the exhaust fitting, and this is where air is exhausted once the brake valve has done its job. This, at the moment, is clean and dry. When you start seeing a lot of engine oil residue around this port, you've got a good indication that something is going on in your air system that isn't desirable and usually ends up in some sort of a failure later on down the road. There are things you need to know about your air system and how to maintain it. Just like before in the earlier videos, we discussed basic maintenance things like air cleaners, filters in general. Here, with your air system, it's just as important for the air compressor to have a clean air filter for the engine, because the air compressor itself draws its air from the filtration system for the engine. Your air system has basically three different circuits. One is the charging system, and you have an A and B reservoir system if you have air brake. If you have hydraulic brake but you have air systems on the truck, you'll only have the one tank. The main reason why your compressor needs clean air is if it has to start drawing air from a blocked filter, eventually your compressor is going to start drawing air from the crankcase of the compressor itself. This, as you can see from the previous pictures, is going to lead to oil contamination in your air system. And also, if you've got any sort of a leakage around the head of the compressor, it's going to show up as oil sitting on top of the compressor. And as the other picture illustrates, there is now oil in the system and it's getting into your air fan drive, which again is going to cause contamination and eventual failure of the air fan drive itself. The other picture in that series shows you the air dryer itself and the purge valve or unloader section of it. This is a good illustration of how much oil can actually go through the system. And that down at the air dryer can also be due to an air dryer cartridge which is long past maintenance. So if the air dryer cartridge becomes loaded with too much engine oil, then it will eventually start to pass through the cartridge as it cannot hold anymore, and you will see it as discharge out of the purge valve assembly. Once the air dryer cartridge reaches the overloaded state, that oil will not only purge out of the purge valve when you unload, it will also enter the reservoirs, and also, as you can see from the illustration of the line to your air drive fan, it will enter the valves and it will enter any part of the air system. So you are going to start seeing premature failure of air valves due to engine oil contamination. This, as you can see here, is actually the compressor for the truck. As you can see from the top of it, it's very oily. This is due to it drawing too much oil up from the compressor's crankcase. It's very important that the compressor gets a chance to unload, and by that I mean it needs to be in a non-compressing condition. The unloader valves that sit on the top of the compressor head will actually force the valves down to open the cylinders to allow the air to pass between the cylinders and no longer overheat for compressing out to the reservoirs. One of the biggest problems with your air system is going to be leakage. If you get out the truck and you can hear air leakage, that's not a good sign, so you should really try and get it fixed pretty quickly. If you are losing air but you can't hear it, then it also applies to get it fixed, because you're probably seeing the gauge and or gauges going down just by sitting in the truck. When you run the truck, if you can hear the compressor cycling, that's the discharging of the air dryer. Even on the road, that should not be happening any more than, at best or at worst, maybe every 5 to 10 minutes. If you're hearing it constantly every 30 seconds, you have a major air leak, more than likely in your charging system. That's the system that takes care of the compressor's air coming out of the compressor and eventually reaching the reservoirs. So briefly, let's recap what we've discussed. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure your air supply to the compressor is clean and dry. That means the engine air filter, keep that clean, keep it unplugged, and service it when you need to service it. Second, look at your air system. Is there oil around the purge valve on the dryer? Is there oil around the compressor and any of the valve's exhaust ports? If you see that oil, you know you're getting oil in the air system, and it is going to eventually deteriorate the valve to the point where the valve will leak constantly, and then we're back to your air leaks again. Point number 3, is that compressor cycling too much? Remember what I said about it not unloading long enough to cool. That can eventually lead to a cracked compressor head, loss of coolant, oil contamination in the engine, just a bad scene all round. Number 4, can you hear or see air leak? And when I mean see, if you've got an oily system, the valve itself is probably going to be bubbling with engine oil around the purge valve, the exhaust valve of the valve itself. And number 5, just to hit it home, is the dryer excessively loaded with oil around the purge valve? This is your best indication that your dryer needs servicing, and also a good indication that you may be in need of a compressor, because the compressor is now passing way too much oil. Thanks for watching. I hope this is of help to some of you, and if you have any comments or questions, feel free to call.